I never believed in the supernatural. Ghosts, monsters, and all sorts of creatures that go bump in the night were just stories to me. That is, until I stumbled upon the dead werewolf. It was late in the evening when I decided to go for a shortcut through the forest. Foolish, I know, but I was in a hurry to get back home. The sky was dark and ominous, with thick clouds covering the full moon. I could feel the chill in the air as I made my way deeper into the forest, the trees towering around me like silent sentinels. Suddenly, I heard a noise. It sounded like low growling, coming from behind me. I turned around, but there was nothing there. I shrugged it off as my imagination playing tricks on me and continued walking. But the growling persisted, growing louder and closer. My heart began to race as I quickened my pace. I could feel something watching me, lurking in the shadows. I desperately wanted to turn back, but I almost out of the forest and I didn't want to waste any more time. That's when I saw it. It was clearing ahead, under the faint light of the moon, lay a huge, monstrous creature. Its body was covered in matted, dark fur, and its face was contorted in a gruesome snarl. Most tellingly, the creature had a human-like form, with long arms and clawed hands. I froze, unable to look away from the gruesome sight. I knew what it was, a werewolf. I've heard the stories, but I've never thought that it could be real. And now, I was staring at a dead one. I wanted to run, to get as far away from the dead werewolf as possible, but something compelled me to stay. I slowly walked towards it, my curiosity getting the better of me. As I got closer, I could see that the creature's body was twisted and torn, as if it had to put up a fight before it died. That's when I noticed the strange markings on its fur. It looked like someone had painted symbols all over the werewolf's body. I couldn't make sense of them, but they gave me an eerie feeling. I suddenly realized that I was not alone. I could hear a faint whispering, like a soft chant coming from around me. I looked around frantically, but I couldn't see no one. And then I saw them. A group of hooded figures standing in the shadows, their faces obscured by their cloaks. I wanted to run, but I was rooted to the spot. The figures began to approach me, the chants growing louder and more intense. They were speaking in a language I didn't understand, but I knew it was ancient and powerful. I felt a wave of fear wash over me. I knew I had to leave, but my limbs wouldn't move. It was as if I was under a spell. And then, the unthinkable happened. The dead werewolf began to twitch, and slowly it rose to its feet. I watched in horror as the creature turned its head towards me, its yellow eyes flashing with a fierce intensity. It let out a howl that sent shivers down my spine, and it was then that I knew I was in grave danger. The hooded figures continued their chant, the voices now joined by the werewolf's howls. The creature started to advance towards me, its body contorting and changing shape as it did. Before my very eyes, the dead werewolf was coming back to life. I was paralyzed with fear as the werewolf lunged at me with its claws extended. But then, a loud bang echoed through the forest. I could see a figure standing a few feet behind the werewolf, holding a shotgun. It was my neighbor, Mr. Jenkins. He had been out hunting and must have heard the commotion. The blast from his gun seemed to break the spell that was holding me, and I took off running as fast as my legs could carry me. I didn't stop until I reached my house, where I promptly locked all doors and the windows. I couldn't believe what just happened. I stumbled across a group of werewolf worshippers performing a ritual on a dead werewolf. And somehow, I had caught their attention. I shuddered to think what it could have happened if Mr. Jenkins hadn't been there to save me. After that night, I couldn't stop thinking about the incident. I did some research and found out that the markings on the werewolf's body were symbols used in a dark ritual to bring the dead back to life. I had witnessed it firsthand. I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched, as the werewolf cult was still keeping an eye on me. I started having nightmares, with some hooded figures and a dead werewolf haunting my dreams. I knew I had to do something about it. There have been numerous sightings of werewolves in the area over the years, but they were always dismissed as just stories or hoax. But now, I knew the truth. The werewolves were real, and there was a cult dedicating to bring them back to life. I knew I had to take an action. I contacted the authorities and shared all the information I had gathered. They launched an investigation and were able to shut down the werewolf cult, arresting its members and putting an end to their dangerous rituals. But even though the cult was no longer a threat, I couldn't shake off the fear and paranoia that had consumed me. I couldn't go with the forest anymore, and every time I heard a howl at the night, I was filled with dread. I learned a valuable lesson from my encounter with a dead werewolf. The supernatural may seem like a mere folktale, but sometimes it can be all too real. And I would never underestimate its powers again.